Welcome to the latest episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the studio at St. Thomas University. And with us today, we have Ray Shipman. How you doing, Ray?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. So for all of you, a little background on Ray Shipman. He went to school literally at Monsignor Pace High School, right down. Him and I went to school. I was 02. I think you were...
2008.
2008.
Do you have any pictures of you from back in high school?
I got some.
You got to share that with me.
I would. I had a good amount of hair, so looks a little different for sure. But Ray's a legend in this area. I mean, you're talking about two-time state champion, Mr. Florida in basketball, the entire state of Florida. He was the best basketball player that year. Additionally, one of the top recruits in the country, signed with Billy Donovan at the University of Florida, played there for 2 years, then decided to make a change. He decided to make a change and go to the University of Central Florida and play football for George O'Leary. Did so well that he got picked up after 2 years by the New Orleans Saints. Had his career there and is currently the director of business development for the Memorial Healthcare System. But the one thing I wanted to start this off with that it really popped out at me, because it's a big deal, especially for student athletes. You were the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year.
I was.
That's a huge deal. And I wanted to start off with that because there's a lot of times, especially the athletes here, there's a lot of, I think all of them are athletes in this class, and a lot of the students are going to be watching, the importance of hitting the book. So I want to ask you, why did you do that? Why did you focus so much on that you became... The SEC is a big deal. You're talking about University of Florida, Mississippi State. I mean, all these different schools that are major schools throughout our country. Incredible educational institutions. And you were the top guy.
I have to credit that out to my parents. My mom was an educator, still is an educator. And to be quite honest, I don't think I've ever told anyone this. I didn't even know how prestigious that award was, nor did I care when I received it. But it wasn't until the conclusion of my sports career that I really saw how huge of an accolade that was and how it followed me for the rest of my career. So I talk about that award when I applied for my job at Memorial. We spoke more about that in my interview than anything else. So I hang my hat on that award, and it's something I tell my son that I received because he's a young athlete now, and it's a part of my story, and I'm proud of it.
So big lesson to those athletes out there. I watched a podcast on you in preparation for this, another interview, and you talked about how sports careers, especially football and certain every single sport, right? It's a limited time frame, and the importance of preparing for that. So appreciated you sharing that, because I think those athletes needed to hear that, especially from somebody like you that's done it all. But talk to us about that journey. Now pivoting a little bit more into the sports arena, talk to us about that journey from going from Mr. Basketball in Florida, signing. What was that decision that you wanted to sign with the Gators, with Billy Donovan? Why did you choose the University of Florida and Billy Donovan?
It was a no-brainer at the time, being that was 2008. University of Florida was coming off of back-to-back national championships. I'm here in Florida. It was a no-brainer. 5 hours away from home. So Billy Donovan didn't really have to do too much selling. It was a sure thing as soon as they gave me the offer. And unfortunately, it wasn't the right fit as far as playing style. Have nothing bad to say about University of Florida athletics nor Billy Donovan. But you're an athlete, everyone playing style doesn't fit every system. And it took me 2 years to realize that. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And with me seeing that wasn't the right fit, allowed me to pivot to my other passion, which was football.
So in preparation for that pivot, how did you change, not only physically, right? Because you had to change physically from playing basketball to now being you're a linebacker at the University of Central Florida, but the mental aspect. So talk to us about both the physical and the mental aspect of pivoting from playing basketball to now playing football for a great program.
It was, I say, the mental change was the biggest hurdle to jump over. But I learned a lot from University of Florida how to stay mentally strong, because as you mentioned, I was Gatorade Player of the Year, Mr. Basketball for the state of Florida. And I assumed that I'd go to Florida, do maybe 2 years, and go to the NBA. And when that didn't happen, there were some dark times in my life where I had to, hey, get out of the room and face that obstacle and get over it. And there were some tough times. So when I transferred to football, I'd be lying if I said it was just easy as soon as I stepped on the field. It was tough, but I was able to use some of those things, like reaching out to family, talking to loved ones when those tough times presented themselves with football. Because football, a lot of people think you just have to be athletic and run fast. So when we talk about mentally, the playbook in football compared to the playbooks in basketball. In basketball, you have a system, you have motion, you know where your guy's going to be on the court, you have spacing. If you play ball, you know that. Football, every week there's a different game plan. And now you're talking to a guy who was coming into my situation where I hadn't played football since my 9th grade of high school, my freshman year of high school. So just learning the football schemes, and then of course the physicality, that was tough in itself. I put on 30 pounds in 2 summers.
Wow.
So, and then the heat, basketball, I'm in the AC.
Yeah.
I'm chilling. Football, total opposite. I'm in Central Florida, scorching hot. Coach George O'Leary screaming at you every play. But it built some calluses on me, not only physical calluses, but mental calluses that I was able to overcome. So when things do arise in my life that are tough, I just go back to those times in my life and how I overcame them.
So how did that prepare you, those days with George O'Leary, to playing for the Saints, to ensuring that you got picked up right after the draft, right?
Free agent.
As a free agent. So how was that transition from being a college athlete to a professional?
Well, it's so funny. So George O'Leary, when I was playing, I thought he was the meanest guy in the world. Like strict, like it was insane. Some of the nicknames we used to have for him, I can't even say on this podcast. But he was a tough guy. But looking at life now as an adult, there's a lot of things that I learned from him that I use to this day. Like even today with the podcast, and you guys invited me here. You guys told me to be here at 10:30. I was here at 10.
I know.
George O'Leary, our head football coach at Central Florida, if you were on time to a meeting, you were late. And that just, it's instilled in me. It's instilled to me to this day. My wife hates it if we're going to a movie or dinner. I'm like, hey, we have to go. If you're on time, you're late. So things like that, being a professional, he trained all of us to be professional. He made sure that we carried ourselves as gentlemen. We weren't allowed to have facial hair, like just those different things that he instilled in us in college. They stay with me now as an adult. And then as far as the football and the X's and O's, he was a tough-nosed guy. And we were big in the weight room. It was always the next man up. So you always knew, hey, at any given time, if you mess up, you're going to be benched. Whereas in some universities, they have the 5 stars that are guaranteed they're going to play. So it helped me when I transitioned to the NFL. Just a lot of those things that he taught me, what I was seeing when I was in the NFL, almost mirroring some of the things he instilled in me at Central Florida.
So and then from pivoting from the NFL, right? And you talked about how long was that journey? I know there was a hamstring injury.
Yeah, man, it wasn't. I have to tell people all the time, NFL, not for long. That's the acronym, not for long, and that's why I jump on these opportunities when I'm able to speak to young athletes or just speak to anyone about the NFL and about the sports journey, especially for those who may have never played or played at that high level. From the outside looking in, it's the glitz and glamour. Oh, you play football, you play basketball, but they don't know the mental strains it has on you, not alone accompanied with the physical strains. But I injured myself when I was with the Saints, and already I went in as a preferred free agent, which I wasn't drafted. So a lot of people don't know what that means. You have the 7 rounds of the NFL draft, and then you have those players who are called right after that. I was one of those players. So I went in with the low chance of making the team and then getting injured, a severe hamstring injury during camp. That was tough. And after that, I played in the CFL for a little bit after that. But when those things started happening, it proved to me that football really wasn't where I wanted to be at that time in my life, because I know a lot of guys are in their 30s now, still pushing to go pro, and It's like at some point in time, you're gonna have to look yourself in the mirror and be realistic with yourself, and start moving in a different direction before it's too late. Because those 2 to 3 years after college, you're playing professional sports, and there's other people in industries that you may be interested in who are already ahead of you. So you don't want to be 30 years old looking for your first job. Not to say it's not possible, because the day and age we live in now, technology, information is at the grasp of our fingers. But at that time of my life, I just really wanted to move in a different direction and start my career elsewhere.
So you mentioned something powerful. You said you got to look at yourself in the mirror and have that conversation. How was that conversation when you looked yourself in the mirror? You're like, you know what? NFL, CFL didn't work out. We're moving on.
It was tough, only because I felt like I didn't have any control of it, being that I was injured. And this is my first time saying this publicly as well. All my loved ones and close friends know about this, but after my short time with the CFL, I finished the season with them. The Buffalo Bills reached out to me to sign me. The Canadian Football League would not let me out of my contract.
Oh,
so that in itself was like, I can't catch a break. I couldn't catch a break. So it was tough. That was, I would say, one of the toughest times I've had in my life. I thought at the time, but now you have kids, I'm married. So when things in perspective, it's just like, hey, that was just a bump in the road. I'm blessed now. But so when I had to look myself in the mirror, it was more so, hey, you gave it your best shot. The things didn't line up in my favor, but it's time to move on.
No, and moving on is interesting. Going back to the first point, moving on and having that interview with Memorial, and you said the main conversation went back to being the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. Did you ever think back then, and looking forward, that would help open up so many doors, that education that you received for free, right? Being an athlete, you receive that education, but that now is providing for your family, allowing you to create a life going forward, an incredible life. I mean, talk to us about just coming full circle now, because it seems like it's come full circle, man. You're a success. Forget about sports, everything, but in life, you're a success, and you're a great example to the folks that are going to be watching this. But talk to us about everything coming full circle.
When we started this, you asked about that mindset, and I credited my parents. My dad was a retired police officer, 30 years in the city of Miami. My mom is still in education, and they instilled that in me at an early age. You have to have grades. You have to always have your education to fall back on. And I would just patronize them. Okay. Because I didn't see it. I thought I was going to play pro forever. And then maybe after that, hey, open a few businesses and hire people to run them for me. But exactly what they instilled in me and told me how it would happen is how it happened. There was going to come a day when I was going to have to fall back on my education. And that interview with Memorial was that day. My then supervisor asked me about my lack thereof of work experience, because as college athletes, you can't work. There's no way you can work. Yep. We're out of town every weekend, practices Monday through Friday. You're waking up study hall. You have no time to work. So on my resume, there was no job experience. But I was able to sell myself in the sense of me being a college athlete and how that would transition over to me showing my value to the Memorial Healthcare System. I was a captain of the linebackers room. I worked well with others. I was always on time. Like those things, I was able to show her are intangible skills that I gained from being an athlete that were going to transition over. So they took a chance on me, and fast forward 8 years, I've still been with Memorial Healthcare System. I've had various roles, and I'm happy where I am.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that. And you're also an author, right? So before we get to the questions from the students, talk to us about being an author, because now you're going even further on your career. And I know you wrote a great children's book.
Mm-hmm. Picture book.
Yeah, talk to us about that.
I was home one day, and a lot of people to this day ask me, like, they'll reach out, how do you write a children's book? Do you get it published? It literally took me maybe an hour and a half to write this book, because it wasn't about the manuscript that I was worried about. It was more so the message. When I came home from playing in New Orleans, a few of my friends were educators, and they were in elementary schools, and they would ask me to come speak to these students, and it would never fail. there was always a student they would pull after my presentation and have me talk to them, and they would always say, hey, Jim's the best kid on the football team. He just doesn't listen in class. He's not doing his work. I go to another school, and it's always the same thing. And I was battling on how I could get through to these kids, because I was a young athlete, and we have guest speakers and to go through one and come out the other. So I wanted to create something tangible for the half, and that was the children's book. So the children's book is a simple message about a young athlete who's the best player on his team who doesn't do homework. And when he doesn't do his homework and brings home bad grades, his parents hold him from the game. His team loses. Now, that's his epiphany, his aha moment, where it's now, okay, I need to start studying, doing my homework. He picks his grades up. He comes back to play. He saves the team. They win. Simple. Picture book, young African-American football player, because in my community where I grew up, a lot of kids that look like me solely rely on sports and entertainment. Not to deter them from it, because you can have success in it, but as we've been talking about my story, if it wasn't for my educational background, I wouldn't be where I am today after the ball stopped bouncing. So it's a book that can be passed on from generation to generation. It's 4 elementary grades, but my daughter, she's 1. We still show her the pictures. There's nice colors to it, so it's eye-popping, eye-catchy. More so, like I said, it's a picture book for young readers. And
I'm grabbing a signed copy today for sure.
All yours.
100%. So we're gonna hand it off to the students. What do you guys got?
Could I see the book?
Sure.
See the book?
Sure. So this is Jason. As you can see, he has a football in one hand and a graded paper with an A+ on the other.
Could you show us some of the illustrations?
Gotcha. So this actually, the page I flipped to here is Jason on the bench. He's not dressed out while his teammates are playing. This is the game he was held out because he brought home bad grades, and it ends. Well, you see now, like I said, he changes. Now he's studying, and it ends. This picture here is real powerful to me, and I made sure my illustrator was able to capture this. You can see here. This is Jason powerful. Now with football and a diploma in the other hand. So, yep.
You don't mind, I'm gonna start out with the questioning here. I'm a firm believer that we grow up to be the person that we always wanted when we were a child, right? Knowing your life experience, what type of father has that made you? Like, what are the things that you are weary of? What are the things you want to make sure to instill?
I had a cheat code. I had my dad. So to this day, I mimic everything he did. Literally everything. It's to the point I'm envious of him. I'm envious of just, because right now I'm a new father, and just from seeing how my father was able to raise 2 successful kids, we stayed out of trouble. He's still in our lives. I literally feel like I have the blueprint to doing everything he did. So if it's for my family and the way we're set up, I don't miss practices. I don't miss school plays. He hasn't had a play yet. I know that sounded cliche, but anything he has at school, I'm there. And that's what my dad did for me. And as a kid, I didn't know the value of it. But now as a parent, I see it was those things. He was putting in those deposits. He was sacrificing. My dad, like I said, was in law enforcement. He would get off at 5 o'clock. He was at our practice at 6. He never missed a practice. And out of that work, how was he doing that? We tried travel basketball. He was at every game. My mom, same thing, but just mimicking what they did with me and my sister. So I can't take any credit for it. I have to give it all to him.
That's awesome.
So growing up, you mentioned how, you kind of didn't really like value homework or like education in that sense, and that it took, like real life to kind of show you that you should care about it. Is there any type of like media or any type of like show or speaker, public figure even, who inspired you to act in a certain type of way or like change your demeanor?
I got to go back to this. It's my parents, man. It's my parents. Like we spent, and I look at it now because I'm the same way. Like my dad and my mom, they had a few close friends, but it was just the 4 of us. So same thing with me now. Like we were close. Still are a close knit family. We do everything together. but it was me just taking gems and learning from my father's experiences, his mistakes, just seeing some of the things that he may have thought that were working with me, but me knowing as a kid, when he did that, it didn't work. So now as a father, it's me saying, okay, I know when my dad did this, it didn't sink in with me, so I need to try this a little different with my son, or even with my wife. I'm married. Marriage is just as tough. I know you guys are college students, but marriage is just as tough battle. But just learning from what I saw in my parents and things like that. And then I would say now, trying to think who now that I'm like Muhammad Ali. That was another. My dad introduced Muhammad Ali to me when I was young. Books, documentaries. And just how he carried himself a bit more than the athlete. He was very outspoken. I'm not as outspoken as that, but just standing firm on his beliefs and things like that. So Muhammad Ali was a huge inspiration to me.
What was the biggest difference, like coming from the college world to like the professional? Because I know like college, you have like distractions. Like, it's obviously college, but then you go to the NFL where you have more free time on your hands, but like it's a professional.
A lot more free time.
So what's that like?
And it's so funny you asked that question because him and I were talking before we aired. He was asking me how was New Orleans. New Orleans and Miami, and I would say maybe Cali are some of the toughest places for rookies to transition because there's so many things to get into. But like you mentioned, you don't have anyone. You don't have a class checker following you like we did in college. Like in college, there was a class checker making sure you were in class. There was a nutritionist making sure you ate the right things. But when you go pro, once you leave the premises, you in the real world. It's basically you do what you want to do. And then being a young guy with a little money in my pocket, more money than I had ever had before, that was dangerous. But just keeping people around me who cared and who had similar experiences was able to help me. But that's the big transition for a lot of young athletes, going from the college setting where everything is basically handed to you and you're given instructions to going pro, where it's just like you're on your own.
Like you have this book out now. Like, is there any more like aspirations you plan on diving into in the future?
I'm trying to encourage my wife to write a book now, because I have a daughter now. Like I always knew when I was writing this book when my wife was pregnant, because I knew that it would have an impact on my son. But now that we have a daughter, I've been trying to push my wife to write a book. But I would say this is going to be the only book I write. I say that now because it's timeless. This message here can go from generations, as I mentioned earlier. So and people are going to continue to have kids. So it's catching young athletes at that time in their life where they're just starting to play sports and they dream big and they have dreams of being professional athletes, but just making sure that they're instilled with how important education is.
You guys got anything else? Yeah, you got it, bro.
You're drilling me.
So you obviously made it like farther than a lot of like average people would, and so like what would be like any like advice you would say to like be able to like stay focused? Because obviously you had to have some level of focus to get the grab. But like for normal people, even if you're not an athlete, just regular students trying to finish school, like life in general, like what would be your like, advice to like stay focused?
I feel like you answered it. Staying focused and staying motivated, finding something to motivate you. Because at times things become lethargic. How do I pronounce the word? Lethargic. And I'm talking about education. I can't pronounce it.
It's all good.
Lethargic. They can become lethargic, but staying motivated, man. In the perfect world, everyone will be able to do something they love, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we're in situations where we're doing things to take care of our family. So if it's a situation like that, just staying motivated, knowing your why. I think that's what gets me to continue to striving, because even if it's a time in my life where I felt like, okay, I can sit back, but it's like, no, my family, I have to still support my family, better life for my wife and my kids. So just knowing what my why is. So I would say find what your why is, because a lot of times your why can push you further.
Are there any certain routines that you still keep up with today that you learned when you were in college or when you were in the NFL?
I would say, like I mentioned, the timeliness, making sure I'm on time wherever I go, and having a schedule. I had a hard time adjusting after the NFL because I didn't have a schedule. I stopped working out, gained like maybe 15 pounds. It wasn't until I started back on a schedule, and what that schedule looked like, it was me waking up, working out, having time to myself. At that time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so it was researching careers. So just keeping my mind busy. I think being on a schedule as a former athlete is what structures me and helps me keep going. Because even with the pandemic, when I wasn't going into work and a lot of the world stopped, I think that's when I had the most stress because it threw off my schedule. So I try to stay to a strict, not as strict, but as I wasn't an athlete, but in the schedule. And working out. When I don't work out, it's like, I don't know what it is. I guess just working out all the time as an athlete, things get foggy when I don't work out. I don't necessarily work out to like stay in shape. With me, it's more so just to stay cognitively sharp.
So you talk really positively about your family and how you had such good role models growing up and how that was like a key factor in your success. Is there any advice you'd give to someone who doesn't have good role models like that and they struggle with,
I would say find
like
one.
that?
Find one. I would say find one. And the world we live in now with social media, like I'm on LinkedIn. I've had so many students reach out to me, asking me for advice, asking to shadow me. I wish I had done that when I was younger. Find someone. You don't even have to know this person, but reach out. And a lot of times people like the fact that there's younger individuals who admire them and will want advice. So I would say find a mentor. Even if that mentor is not someone that's tangible to you, follow them. Follow them on social media. Like, this is a multimedia communications class. Nowadays, content is everything. And if you find someone who has good content and they're pushing it out there, hey, study it. See what they did to become where they are now.
Everyone has friends. Like from the people you grew up with, like you obviously you play college ball, you play professional, and like you said, you got a little bit more money. Like the same people you grew up around, like hanging out with, did your crowd change as you got more successful? And if it did, what was like the biggest indicator for you to leave people behind?
It didn't change when I became more successful. I think when I started really, really becoming competitive in sports is when me and my friends started to go in different directions. Because for me, 6 a.m. in the morning before school, I'm working out. Before practice, I'm getting shots up. Every weekend, I'm traveling. And this was middle school with travel basketball. So for friends who weren't in that same world, like they were going to the movies, hanging out. And it's not because we weren't friends. It was because our lives were going in different directions. And then once I started playing college sports, my friends were my teammates. So my wife even asked, like when we met each other, she's like, "Who's your friends?" I was like, all my friends were really my teammates, because my life as an athlete, especially when you're growing up in a neighborhood where not too many kids play sport, you and your friends kind of go in different directions. And as I've gotten older now, we've reconnected. Like we've gone to play pickup together a few times.
Yeah.
So
We gotta get Josue out there. So.
Yeah. So I reconnect with a lot of my friends that I grew up with now because we play sports together. But that's what it is, just different lifestyles.
Like it kind of goes in what I just asked, but like since you're moving to like educational field now, is that crowd different from your like athletic crowd, or like is it mesh well together?
I try to keep a broad network because I learn from the people that I keep around me. So I have friends that I could be around. We talk about things totally different than I would with another group of friends. But I try to keep a broad network because I'm always learning from the people around me. If I actually were to get all of my friends in a room together, you'd be confused. You'd probably like, what's going on in here? Because the common denominator would be me. So the people I stay in contact with are from different walks of life, but I make sure I keep around me because they're friends, they're supportive, and I'm learning things from them.
Kind of outside from your personal life, but more of a personal opinion of yours. I think asking you would be a unique one because you're kind of like almost like a last generation to not live in this world. What is your opinion on NIL deals?
Say that again now? What is my opinion on what?
On NIL deals.
Oh, I talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
So I was a huge advocate for college athletes being compensated. Like even right after I was playing, I was a huge advocate of it. But the way the NILs are set up now, I feel like the NCAA turned into the Wild Wild West. They addressed the issue of athletes being paid, but I don't think they addressed it or set up or implemented it the right way. The fact, if anyone knows NIL deals, it's basically those same boosters who were being slapped on the wrist for illegally paying athletes are essentially just given a green light to do it in the sense of marketing. I've seen NIL deals for like different companies that an athlete has no interest or marketing. Even the demographics or the consumers of that market don't care about athletes or that athlete talking about why you should purchase that. So I think the NCAA needs to go back to the drawing board. I think they just try to keep their hands clean. But I do feel that athletes should be compensated some way or some form. But just the way they're doing it now, I'm interested to see how it'll transition in the next few years, because a lot of these athletes are being paid big bucks, and there's no structure to it. Like, you can have a starter quarterback getting $1 million a year, and then the offensive lineman getting an NIL deal for $10,000. Then you have players getting paid NIL deals before they even get to college. So now you get a kid who gets an NIL deal, but when he gets there, he's not a starter. How do you tell that kid that's in front of him that this kid is making millions and you aren't getting anything and you're the starting quarterback? So,
since you obviously shared your you've been in D1 locker rooms at this point in your life, do you think that locker room would have been, in some way, shape, or animosity, weird, different?
Man. Just thinking about now, like the D1 locker room, just the Pell Grants. You would know, and that would be the money from financial aid that some of the athletes would receive, depending upon their parents' income. So you had some players who would get those financial aid checks, and you could see the difference in the locker room and the other players giving them the side eye. And that was like maybe I think $2,000 for the semester, and you knew when those checks came in. But now we're here talking about millions of dollars. You have players making more than the coaches. You have players making more than the coaches, and then, like I mentioned, you have a player getting that type of money and he's not starting. So I'm sure it's some tension in those locker rooms, and I think they should hop on it as soon as possible, because I could really see it causing some damage.
Good question, guys. Appreciate you. And as we wrap up, we do a couple things. We turn it over to you. You get to ask any questions of me, students, whatever you want. So it's your show now for about 2 questions. So anything.
I'm gonna come at you because it's so funny. People always tell me, "Oh, Ray, you should get into politics," and I always stay away from it. But I feel like we have things in common, just like being people persons. Because I followed from afar. We were in a high school together, but we played pickup ball together.
Yep.
But did you always have aspirations of going into politics, and how has that journey been for you?
So, great question. No, I at first I didn't want to do politics. Long story, I want to be a marine biologist. I get seasick, so it didn't work out. But then I realized that everything revolves around politics. For example, we were just talking about NIL. The state legislature was just talking about regulating NIL, and they passed certain rules, and so I became enamored with the process of politics, because everything we do in life, from I've told the students before, from the haircut that you get, the license that your barber or your hairdresser, somebody in politics made that rule.
Right.
So that's when I realized we need good people. We got to get involved. And it's tough to complain from the outside sometimes. So I was like, no, I got to get in and make a difference. So the journey's been interesting. It's been tough, but you got to swing big, man. So when I ran for mayor, for example, everybody was against. People were super upset, and I was like, no, we're going to win. But I worked everybody, knocked on about 6,000 doors, and won the election, man. Yeah. But let me tell you, I honestly think you'd be great at public service.
So that's the thing, public service, yeah. So I feel like it's a divide. I don't know. Just the rolling up your sleeves and the infrastructure of politics is different from the public service to me, I feel like.
It is.
I want to help people.
But fortunately, local politics,
you're right.
You don't run on partisan issues, right? So you don't have an R or a D next to your name. Exactly. So I'm fortunate. I have Republican friends, independents, Democrats, all over the place. If I had an R or a D next to my name,
Totally changed.
no, it changes the game.
Totally changes, yeah.
So I love local politics because it's all bread and butter issues, right? So that I deal with every day, but it brings people together. But yeah, you're right. Beyond local politics,
Yeah.
it's a little
That's people always say-
divisive nowadays.
People always say, man, you should be the mayor. Mayor, because just watching you from afar, man, you seem like a great. Well, I know you're a great guy, good
Appreciate
people
it.
person. But
Where
that's
do you live right now?
Pembroke Pines?
Man, the next Mayor Shipman.
Nah. And it's so funny.
Wait, never say no. Listen, I'm serious.
I don't know, man. I don't know. And it's so funny. The mayor of
That's
Miramar.
no, we're making that. Let's.
Podcast has turned very.
No, we're making that happen. Listen,
We throw it in the atmosphere.
I am endorsing. I know Frank Ortis, the mayor of Pines. I know he's been talking about for a while that he retires or doesn't retire, but
Me and Frank talk all the time. So I live right by his the Mayor's
the
Cafe.
Mayor's Cafe, yeah.
You have a Mayor's Cafe,
I
right?
do,
Yeah.
I do.
And it's so funny when I go to order on
On Uber
Uber
Eats
Eats,
or Postmates.
yours pops up all
Yeah,
the
all
time.
the time.
I actually ordered from yours one by mistake. I'm like, wait a minute, what's taking so long? But Frank's is like walking distance from my house.
That's cool, but
Yeah.
man, I can be honest with you. I think you should.
I may put some consideration into it, man. But no, I like how, like I said, I watch from afar, man. And like, you're doing public service.
Appreciate that. Mayor Shipman, this is
Here you go.
the announcement, right? So, but definitely consider it, man. I think you'd be great. So, anything else you got? You want to throw this way?
I'm good. Appreciate you
So,
having me.
in closing, any words of motivation, inspiration? Because I think that, for example, no grades, no play. I'm gonna give you an example how that could have impacted me. So when I played at Pace, Coach Lieberman was my coach. Coach D, remember Coach D, Coach Darren, rest in peace. I know he had passed several years back. He was my coach on JV. I was a starting point guard, moving on to varsity, and I'll never forget. I had a 1.5 GPA.
Ouch.
And Mark brings me into his office. He's like, hey, I wasn't a superstar, right? I was behind Julian Richardson at the time.
Oklahoma,
yeah. And I remember you used to show up and practice with us.
In middle school.
But Coach Mark brings me into his office. He's like, it's over. Look at your grades. I go, look, you're not, you know what I mean? You don't put in as much work on the court that you need to, but it's over. So I wish that I had the opportunity. I mean, maybe God put that in my path to inspire me for other things.
Everything
But
happens for a reason.
that book, just when I saw the cover, how much that meant to me, because I was that kid. I lost out on the opportunity there at Pace. And when I got to that level that year, my junior year, when it was no grades, no play. And it was very true. So any words of inspiration, motivation, which you've already done a lot of that, but I think your story is so powerful, and I appreciate you sharing that. So in closing, anything that you wanted to share to motivate, inspire that future Ray Shipman, that kid that might be following in your footsteps and needs those words of advice?
I would just say, and I hate giving advice, man. I just hate it. I feel like I try to live my life in a way of you can kind of see how I move, but when I say it to people, it just makes me uncomfortable. But I would say use sports. Don't let it use you. Sports is a vehicle that can catapult you into many great things in life. But if you're allowed to use you, I've seen it destroy lives. So take as much away from the people, the experiences, all that you're going to gain from playing sports, and learn from it. Because like I mentioned, the intangible skills that I learned from sports, I don't think I would have learned these skills or received these experiences from anywhere else.
That is true. And shout out to Mom and Dad Shipman. So I appreciate you as much as you shared about your parents, because I think that in itself was so powerful. And there you have it, the great Ray Shipman.
Stop it.
Sharing his incredible stories, inspiring story here on 305 Vox Populi. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate you, man.
We got to hoop again, man. This
Oh,
guy
no.
here, you guys got to send him on the basketball court. Hey.
No. But don't try to out-rebound this guy. I tried once, and
Good.
I ended up out of bounds somewhere. So
Appreciate it.
tune in next Wednesday on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.